you've been looking for. Just a very last minute technical enjoyment today. I've jumped on my phone for Zoom today because screen is not working, laptop's not working, so apologies if I'm a little more moving around than usual. But yeah, so we're here this week talking about comparison and how it's the root to suffering. Or is it? I guess that's the suggestion that we're making. But is that true? So yeah, let's open it up and see where we both get to. So I guess, or where we all get to. What do you guys both see? So what have you? Where has comparison come up for you? What's it looking like?
Yeah, all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
It's part and parcel of being a human being, isn't it? Is that comparison exists in language. So, we can't. I don't think you can have an experience of being a human without comparison. It just doesn't exist. That you're constantly comparing as a, just to do your day, just to, do I want this or that? And the question is sometimes whether or not you're identifying with that comparison or not. Whether you think comparison makes you who you are, but it's a comparison which ultimately, I think you said on Facebook, that it's the thief of joy, but it's the thief for so much other stuff as well. It's the thief of security. It's the thief of confidence. It's the thief of well-being. It can be the thief of relationships. It's one of the things that we're always doing is comparing ourselves to others, and comparing ourselves to other circumstances, other situations, how we were yesterday, how we think we're going to be tomorrow, how that person was, what that person looked like. It's a constant process of, comparison is also judgment, isn't it? Is that what we're saying at the same time?
It also looks so solid, doesn't it? I know that, we all habitually scroll, don't we, in idle moments, well, I do anyway, through social feeds, and you're like, oh God, look at their holiday, or their life looks so good. Mine feels so bad by comparison. And it looks, I know we've talked about this before, it looks like an objective reality, that's just how it is. And yet it can't ever be that way, because it's only ever seen through the prism of, the quality of our thinking in that moment. So obviously, when we feel more insecure, we're probably going to be more prone to comparing and seeing that other people's lives look better.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that reminds me of, so somebody on a recent program was saying how she noticed a difference. I can't remember who she was talking about, whether it was another, like a coach or somebody in like a closer relationship, but somebody who in the past she would have spent her time thinking, oh look, they're doing that and I'm not, and I'm so rubbish. And this time it was just like, there was just for her this sense of delight that this other person was doing what they were doing, and just genuine happiness, because she wasn't sitting in insecurity, therefore it didn't look like there was anything wrong with what the other person was doing. And it also didn't look like anything wrong with what she was doing. They were just, here I am living my life, and she is living her life, and how lovely that she's doing whatever that is.
Yeah.
But from the insecurity, that can't be seen, can it? It's just, that's how it's designed. That's how the whole thing works.
My own experience of life, one thing I used to do all the time was I used to come to my birthday and I'd be like, oh, I'm 40, or I'm this much, I haven't achieved anything now, I haven't got to where these other people have been. I used to work in an environment that had a lot of people that had masters, doctorates, sometimes double doctorates, and I barely cobbled together a couple of GCSEs and City and Guilds. That's not entirely true. I'm just being flippant. But I constantly used to compare myself, and it constantly used to be, well, I'm not good enough because I haven't got a degree, and I'm not as good as these people in the room because they have degrees. And most of my day was in that space of just not feeling good enough and not feeling like I was worthy, really, because I was constantly comparing where I was in my life, or where I thought I should be in my life compared to where I am now, where I was, and saying that, I'm not worthy of that. And it's only maybe in, you know, in the past couple of years that's all completely gone. There's no comparison of me against anything else. But for a long time, it was the driver for my behavior, that feeling of not feeling good enough, of comparing myself to other people all the time, and looking at other people and going, oh, look, their life must be better. They're happier than I am. Why am I not like them?
Yeah, and all judged from that surface experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, so not only are you looking at it through insecure eyes, but you're seeing like it's one snapshot, one moment, and labeling the whole thing, going, oh, look, they're happy in that one instant, and I feel insecure right now, so that looks terrible, and that's clearly their life all the time, and this is clearly my life all the time. And completely blinded.
It's what most of sort of like, unfortunately, society is based on, especially now in social media. I mean, one of the downsides of it is that we have this now shoved in our face, and especially with influencer marketing and celebrity marketing and Instagram, a lot of it is, oh, look at us in lockdown, we're preparing this wonderful meal and it's all perfect. And you're like, well, that's not my life in lockdown, or that's not my life generally. And it's this constant narrative that's being reinforced in marketing and messaging, that, you know, you need to be like this because however you are right now is not good enough. And then people projecting that.
I love that though, because it's like coronavirus, you know, it's where COVID's like really emphasized everything that's going on. Same for social media. For me, it's been a gift in terms of both sides of the coin, like seeing how connected we can be and so easily, and seeing like the worst of what we've created, and that really throwing in our faces of, you know, really emphasize the suffering till you wake up and realize what's going on with it.
And it's the story of me. I know we talk about similar themes a lot, but this comparison is all based around an idea of me that looks fixed, an idea of a personality, of a way of being, of skills, of how I look, all that stuff that we think is who we are. And it just isn't. I know it's so compelling because I come in and out of it, but when I see it for what it is and recognize that it's the attachment to that identity that's causing the suffering, because when I believe myself to be rigidly those things, then clearly it feels like I'm separate and everything looks like it needs to be in comparison to me. But when I see that I'm not that, I'm the space behind that, then God, it just opens everything up, doesn't it?
And then in that, for me, and there's been something this week where comparison then actually just becomes useful. So like you said at the start, Gary, we can't get away from the fact it looks like I'm a separate individual to you. And so inevitably there's going to be comparison and judgment, and judgment as in just seeing difference, because that's what this, you know, it's the whole thing is made for that. But by going beyond it, then you see, well, yeah, comparison's going to happen, and it can just provide useful information. So I had one this week where I saw something somebody else had done on social media, just to use that social media example again. I was like, oh my God, they've done that so brilliantly. I can't do that. Oh, they're so amazing. I wish I could do that. And so I had a like momentary, oh, I'm so not good enough and I should have done it better. And then that quickly passed, because I guess, on that occasion, it was seen through fairly quickly. And then it was just like, well, that's really useful. That's really useful information now for me to think about. How do I want to do things differently? And do I? And what's my way of doing it? Because it's not about copying. And that's that thing, that post I wrote this week about, you know, who you are before whatever the world's told you should be. And there's kind of the layers to that. There's almost like the who you are before all that is what you've just talked about in that space prior to any kind of labels at all, the space that can't be labeled. And then there's like, and now in this body, what's this unique flavor here versus for you, Nat and Gary, and everyone else in the world. And if we spend our lives going, oh, I should be like them, God, how boring does it get? Because we're all trying to like, so when you see all the people with identical eyebrows and lips and, oh, how boring. Like, that's not beauty. That's it's just boring. Trying to make identikit human beings.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that it can be a source of information for you. I don't think I really kind of thought about it that way until you said it just then. That there was something that peaked up. It's like, oh yeah, it can be a source of information rather than a source of suffering. And it's something we all do, though, isn't it? Especially in our business as well, what we do. I mean, we discussed this, not on a podcast before, between ourselves, that in business you do it, and in life you do it. Like, oh, look at, they're doing this, should I be doing that? Or they're doing that. And you go look at other people's work. And I used to look at other people's work, and I would then sort of take bits of it, and then I would implement some of it and try to define myself like that person. So it was more of a, oh, okay, that seems to be working for them, so I'll kind of cutter it a little bit and do it this way here. So that must be working. That must be what it will work for me. And of course, then it never really worked for me that way. And so using it as information is just a more of a, it's very difficult to say in language though, isn't it? It's more of a data point then, isn't it? It's more of a thing for you to say, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And I can take some ideas about it, or even inspiration from it as well. Or this could be something that I could use in my life. But it's also so dangerous then not to then model ourselves by that thing that we're taking the comparison from, like we all have the same eyebrows, or and you see that a lot within coaching and spiritual teaching, that it all becomes about the person sat at the front of the class. It's like, then you even see it, it's like, oh, then they're comparing themselves to the person at the front of the class, or like, why is my life not like this person? Or they've got it all down. And I've had clients say that before, when I've turned around and said, oh, here, look, I haven't got this sorted out. I've done this and I've done that, or my life has been a mess, or it still is a mess in these areas, or and they're going, wow, I thought you had it all together. I'm like, really? No way. Nothing together. It's a constant unfolding, and I just have no idea where it's going. It's just that you kind of work out that, oh, that's how it's always been, so I'm just comfortable with that now. It's the comparison is the driver of seeking all the time as well, isn't it? Because it's, I want this moment to be different from where it is right now, so I want to be different in the next moment. I want to be happier tomorrow. I want to be more happier tomorrow than I am today. I need to be better tomorrow than I am today. And inherently, there's nothing wrong with those kind of sentiments and thoughts. It's the identification with it that takes you to suffering, because you're now identifying as this thought and this comparison and the judgment. You're living in the space between where you are and where you think you should be, and that's just uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that's the suffering. That's the what is here right now is not okay, and therefore, or I'm not okay. It's at the entity level, it's fundamentally that, isn't it? And so for me to be better, for me to be more worthy of being on this planet, I need to be over there with that life, doing those things in that way, and then I'll be okay. Then I'll be okay. Then I'll be okay. That's the chase, isn't it?
Trying to secure an insecure self, and it looks so hard. I remember when I first sort of came into this conversation, it all seemed quite surreal. And all I'd heard before that was that if you want to find your way in life and feel some sense of security, is to really pin down that identity, make that identity really strong, know who you are, figure out what your personality is, know how to adapt in situations. That looked like the way to go, very much. And then suddenly I saw that, oh, well, clearly that's just going to make me more insecure, because it kind of carves out that sense of an entity that's separate from everybody else. And yet it can't be, because it's made of thought, and thought is transient. And so why would we try and pin a thought down? And I know that sounds bonkers to people who might not have given consideration to the fact that this idea of who you are is entirely made of thought,
But also, when you're comparing, you're kind of also defining yourself by what you're not. And it's very difficult to define yourself by what you're not. It's like, oh, I'm not that, so I need to become it. And I'm not that, I need to become it. I need to not that. And it's that constant cycle. that you're doing as well.
That's the nature of the self, isn't it? So that self you just described, Natalie, that's its nature is lack. Its nature is to say not enough. Go find some more, achieve some more, drink some more. You've not done it yet. You've not. You don't feel good yet. So keep doing more, and you'll never feel good keeping listening to that voice, because that's like it's made to say that stuff. There's nothing else it can say. It's never ever one day going to say, oh, brilliant, yeah, we've got there, but it's perfect. We've done it.
It's never going to arrive.
It's never going to. It's never going to happen. And it doesn't need to be. Nothing needs to be done with it. Nothing needs to be changed about it. It's not going to change. It's not going to stop being transient. It's not going to stop being insecure. So let's just love it for what it is and go. Yeah, you carry on with your mithering about not enough, and I'm going to live my life.
Exactly. Grange just asked me, which is an interesting question, and one that is comparison learned behavior or nature. And so, comparison is language. It's just basically language, because who were we before we had language? And who are you before you put thought onto things? Because thought is still just language. And so comparison comes in language, because it's just the nature of a dualistic language that we have. Is that language initially was the language of blood and bone, and language is all spatial. It's all time orientated and object and place orientated. It's like this over there. If you look at it, up, down, left, right, here, there, this, that, self, other, and it's all those kind of categories and we can't get away from it. That's why it's so inbuilt into the system, because language is inbuilt on that, because it was designed, it evolved to solve problems. And in a dualistic world, it's really good at that. It's really good at solving problems. It's really good at doing those kind of things. But in nature doesn't give a toss about what you look like and who you are. It's if you take away humans from the planet, if you just remove them conceptually as a thought idea and said, right, what difference does it make? It's still going to be this wonderful chaotic mess of creation and destruction. No tiger sits there and compares itself to another tiger. No cat sits there and compares itself to another cat. They're not doing any of that. They're just doing what they're doing, lived by the energy of life. If you take us away, it's still going to be a beautiful mess of destruction and creation. And just take humans away, and you'll see that no, comparison doesn't exist in nature. It exists in language. It exists in thought. And that's the only place it ever exists.
Yeah, that idea of it, and it's useful. Like we couldn't play in this world if we didn't do it, because we wouldn't know, like, oh, I'm making a cake, which one's flour and which one's eggs. Like we need to be able to compare things. And it's when we get lost in it and believe the stories around it and believe the meaning that's been attached to you'll be good enough when we take that to be true. That's the suffering.
Just sort of devil's advocate, or kind of maybe speaking for the audience, whatever. If we know, or we're saying that this is a transient thought-created self that has this tendency to compare, and that's never going to find this freedom that this separate self is looking for, where do we look then? Where do we go with that?
So I guess it's looking at examples like maybe the one I just described a moment ago with that social media situation. It's kind of getting really close to your experience and seeing what's really going on, and not just, I guess, what's believed is going on. Because the minute we're in belief, it like blankets over the nuance of the actual situation. And when we start to see the nuance and start to see, oh, I don't always feel terrible when I compare, or equally, God, yeah, I always feel terrible when I sit there thinking I should be better, I should be different, I should have done that, the other. But sort of seeing the fluctuating nature of it. Like it's not a permanent experience. Every time you compare does not always equal suffering. And notice what's present each time you equal suffering, which will be a story of I and an idea of lack or an idea of not enough.
Yes. I mean, look to that which is doing the experiencing. Is just look to the experience itself, to the thing that is just experiencing the judgment. It's the thing that is the creation of it. And as you said, Helen, it's the I thought. It's the root of it all. It's the attachment of it. Because as soon as we go to I want this, or I need this, or I want something more than I am right now, we set up an energy, and then that energy seeks to complete itself, and it can't complete itself. It's going to try and complete itself in the outside world of things. It's going to think that its circumstance of completing itself is in an object, and then we're back to a subject-object relationship. And it's more seeing that I am just the thing that's doing the perceiving. It's just perception happening, including the perception of a judgment, including the perception of a comparison. And so when we're caught up in that story, for me, it's always asking the questions of, okay, where's my experience coming from right now? And who is it that's doing the experiencing? And the answer to that is always going to be, thought. And you normally can't find an answer to the who, what question. It goes silent. And then when it goes silent, that's it. Ask yourself what no thought is.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I think that from the place of story and that habitual identification, it looks like that's the place to look in more to get the answer, which just takes us down a rabbit warren. And it's in the recognition and realization that there are the times when that thinking drops away, when there is no I that's apparent, that why would we even be agonizing about comparison, because everything's okay, and recognizing that it's spending more time in that space rather than let's get more of the answers because I need to look over there, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you're always bringing your story of you to the party, aren't you? I mean, that's the only, with your friends and family and other people, when somebody new meets you, there's always this kind of excitement because, this thing was like, they don't know who I am. And you can be a little bit freer with yourself. It always happens at the beginning of relationships, doesn't it? Where, I kind of believe at the beginning of relationships, you are your true self. You are the kind of just the flow of consciousness, because at the beginning of a relationship, there really isn't a self and other, because you get lost in the relationship of it, and you're kind of together and it's one thing. And the only reason that you compare yourself to others, because you bring a story of who you are and you bring a story of who they are as well. And their story has also been taught to you by them, and so when you're comparing to other people, you're not really comparing them to the person that's there. You're just comparing to the thought, because there's no person there. You're just comparing yourself to the thinking about them. You see on social media this celebrity that seems to have the wonderful life, and and then we're also surprised when they turn up to have depression and anxiety, and they've got a big addiction problem. We're like, what? But I thought, but it's because you have this story of who you think they are, and then you take that story and you look at the story of who you think you are, and you're like, there's a difference there, and you're never going to complete that story, like you say, in thought. You're never going to think yourself out of that one. It's just going to constantly go on and on and on.
Yeah, and also going back to the beginning of that, the start of relationships can be a huge place where the I is present. Because if you are thinking, oh my goodness, I must get married because I must have children, or I must achieve that social status or whatever, or now I'm such and such an age, and therefore, if I don't do it soon, so you could turn up to meeting a new person with a whole lot of I thinking. Because suddenly it really looks true that your whole life is riding on this one conversation. So then, you're so caught up in all that stuff. You're never going to meet, like you said, we never meet the real person anyway. We can't get that close to it. But you're even further away from it when you're just caught in that thought about, my well-being relies on this relationship working. That's just. Yeah, like you said, now it's getting into the spiral of the content of it, and get more lost and confused.
Has anyone been watching Normal People, the series on BBC Three? I'm just saying, because quite a lot of people have seen it, and it's very, very evocative and quite deep. It's about a couple who meet at school, and then they go to university, and they have this like, it felt their relationship, but it very much looks at the vulnerability and the perception shift between who they think they are and how they miscommunicate with each other because of they're like predicting what each other's thinking, but never really knowing what each other's thinking. And it resonates for so many people because it is our experience of how you know, that mismatch between how we look and how we feel inside, and makes it very real. And I think it's just really helped to, I've had quite a few conversations with people about it, in terms of the perception shifts that you have all the time based on your subjective thinking, and how that's so intrinsic to the human experience. And yet there's a deeper conversation to be had about, like we're having now, about the true self, and that's being the space in which all that is happening, and all that is great, and it can play out exactly as it is, but fundamentally there is no place to get to secure this imagined self. It's just watching that play out, isn't it?
I mean, we was this weekend, I was at a barbecue with friends, and my friend there, they put a lot
Socially
of weight.
Distance, right, Gary?
Socially distance.
Yeah.
No, by the way, just before anybody shops us into the police in Belgium, we're allowed to go around and be in the space of. You're allowed to have 4 people that you nominate as your thing. As a complete side point, somebody posted on Facebook that I thought was really interesting, was like capitalism. The definition of capitalism is when you're allowed to go back to work but not allowed to go see your family. Literally allowed to meet your boss, not meet your family members. So we went over and had a socially distanced barbecue, and I just noticed the person there, they put so much weight on themselves, and because they're like, oh, this gives an opportunity for the work that I'm doing. I'm trying not to identify them, so that's why I'm being a bit vague with some stuff. But you know, they were talking about their work and how much it was on them to do stuff, and how it was all their responsibility to do it. And if it doesn't get done, you know, and I just had this great sense of feeling like, oh, you just put so much responsibility and weight on you that, you know, because they're believing that themselves, like, well, I'm the person that's a linchpin to this, and if I don't get it done, then everything's going to fall apart, and I'm taking all this on my shoulders. Yeah, and there's so much weight to that thinking. There's so much weight to it because thought has an energetic presence. It has a weight to it, which is an energetic spiritual weight. And if when I release it, then it's like, oh, I'm light. I don't have to have any of that thinking anymore. And again, the comparison in that moment is coming from the comparison of who I think I am. I am somebody who has to be responsible. I am somebody who is responsible. So hence, you know, and on the surface, that seems like a really, you know, oh, of course you need to be responsible. Of course you are somebody that needs, and it seems a thought that you would have to have, you know, or a thought that isn't in itself damaging. But to know that, I have to know what irresponsible is. And then I'm living in that, oh, I'm obviously irresponsible then because it's getting done, you know, and it's seeing beyond that you're not that thought. You can't be that thought. And as you said, Natalie, it's like, was it Helen? You know, you said that, you know, who were you before you were told who you were meant to be? It's like, well, who were you before you was given your name at birth? Well, that's 10 minutes before they named you. And the name came and it died.
Yeah, and who were you before you were apparently given that responsibility?
Yeah, exactly. And who gave you the responsibility? You know, it's something I can give you. It's not a physical thing. It's like I put it in a box. Here's your response. Oh, thank you. I'll put it on the mantle shelf. It doesn't work that way. You know, you're doing it all yourself.
And I can see in that as well how we can then get into comparing ourselves. Like I know, even if we're comparing ourselves to an actual person in front of us, we're in imagination if we think that they're somehow better than we are. But we can also do it entirely from imagination with some completely made up idea of what a person in this kind of job does and how they behave and what it should be like. And so we set ourselves this completely intangible, made up hurdle, which can just never be met. Like it's some, just made of clouds in the future, and then trying to achieve it and beating ourselves up for, oh, I'm not there yet. I've not achieved that made up cloud that you can't even put words to, and it's no wonder it feels so terrible.
it's because we believe we live in an imagined universe of shoulds and coulds as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you see that now in what's playing out in the situation with COVID, is that, you know, there's always this, well, we should have locked down earlier, and you just and
we didn't.
And we didn't. Yeah, it's like, it's this constant comparison of an imagined future or past that just didn't exist.
Yeah.
To the thing is now we don't live in that universe. This is it. You know, this is it right here. It's nothing else. This is it. You can't live in a universe where things have never happened or will never happen in the future. It's just this moment, and that's it. That's all you have. And how can you compare this moment to something else? Because there's nothing else to compare it to. It's just this moment, and it's perfect as it is. It can't be anything other than that. And it seems so much discourse and time and energy is wasted on discussions of the imagined past and the imagined future at all levels of society, whether it be you know, just between you and your partner, right up until, oh well, the left say this and the right say that, and while we're in that space, we're not getting anything done.
Yeah, just chucking imagined stories at each other.
Yeah.
And getting really embroiled in it because it's really convincing, isn't it? And getting really angry about it.
Well, yeah, and totally, like going back to what you said before, Nat, about the idea of a me who will be okay when, that whole transient I, you will get embroiled, because that I will fight for its life, thinking that it really, really, really needs it to be this way. And then, so what occurs to me just now is, we've not got loads of time left, because Graham, bless you, thanks Graham for asking a question in the Facebook community group as well, or sharing your experience about comparison just now also being about people who it seems have got a less good deal. So how we can kind of compare downwards, if you want to give it directional space. And but so kind of like, so in a work situation, it might be, oh, I feel guilty because I've got a job and I'm being paid, and look at all these people who are being made redundant. Or in a societal situation, feeling awful that there's a homeless person you're about to walk past, and how we then will sometimes avoid and cross the street, and because we can't bear that discomfort of, oh God, it's, you know, apparently I'm better than them. Like, how do I get this deal and they get that? And that's equally part of the suffering, because you're in the imagination that you're somehow better than them. Like, none of those things say that you're better than those other people, but the identity will again attach, because that's all it does. And so it will spend its life either, oh yeah, I should be over there like those people who are apparently better than me, and I should be somehow feeling guilty for these people who are apparently not as good as me. And just as both sides of that seesaw.
And that sounds so familiar for anyone who's had an experience of depression. One of the key aspects of the shame and the guilt is, I feel this way, why do I even feel this way when there are people who are way worse off than me? And that makes me feel even more ashamed, because I don't have a right to feel this bad. And that's just more layering on of these apparent, you know, comparisons.
We do that as well with people that get depression and they have better lives than us. And there's always this bit like, well, you know, we throw away their depression, don't we? Because they've got better lives than us, you know, because we compare themselves. And so their depression is not real compared to somebody else. It seems to be more real that somebody who is, you know, a single parent living in a poverty type situation, you know, and they get depression. Well, that's more valid. But somebody who gets depression, who's, say, a multi-million-pound sports star, well, that's not as valid, because we're all coming from that separate sense of self. But when you come from the space of, oh, there is no other, there is only one self, then your well-being is my well-being, and your happiness is my happiness, and your peace is my peace. So it becomes a different, not even a different conversation, it becomes a different space that you operate from. And I know what you say about walking past homeless people there, but from this space, if I walk past a homeless person, I haven't got cash or change that I can give them, then I just say, sorry, I haven't got anything. I'm sorry, nothing today. Because I know I can't give to everybody. I can only give to the people that I can give to when I'm with the resources I have in that moment to give to them. And there's never any kind of more sense of shame or guilt about it. And then you can see everybody as equal, because then, if somebody, I always think it's an interesting exercise that I do with clients, and sometimes I go away and imagine what life is like as Trump. And if you're on the other side of the political spectrum, go away and imagine what life is like as Hillary Clinton or whatever your opponent is. Can you go and imagine that, what life is like for them? Can you put yourself into their shoes and ask yourself that question? What is it like for you? And then you'll start to understand about sort of comparison and suffering and empathy. Different space to be.
Yeah, that empathy piece just comes naturally, doesn't it? The more you see who you really are, and you're sitting in that security of knowing we're all that, then conversations can be had with homeless people, and money given or not, and homes offered or not. Like it's not actually about what you do or don't do for them. It's just that you see them as another human being, and same as Donald and then or other similar people, and then it's there's a compassion and a care and you see that their own insecurity leading to that, to the behavior that's being displayed.
And also the lovely recognition and knowing that you and I, we're never broken. We can't be broken. We can't be. It's just not possible. And isn't that incredible to see it from that space, that the potential to point back to who we truly are.
And so do you both find, since coming into this conversation, that comparison is less of a feature, like comparison with suffering? Because like we said, like comparison is going to happen. It's a useful thing in life for us to navigate and get around and improve or be inspired or inspire others and make cakes and whatever the thing is. But do you find that you just let go of comparison more easily, or it just doesn't show up as much as it used to?
I definitely still get embroiled in it from time to time, and I'm very honest with people I'm coaching about that, because I don't want to be seen as like somebody who's got there, because that's a fallacy in its own thing. But I think that the more I hang out in this conversation and this space of wholeness, of knowing, the gentler that experience is sometimes. Sometimes I'll get caught up, but I will fall out of it. And there's kind of more allowing to get caught up, because there's less of a desperation to get out of it and to find a way out of this, because I kind of remember what's going on. It's like that remember, forget. It's like a constant thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think Harry's experience here is pretty much the same. There seems to be a shift recently where there's more of a space around the voice, the internal monologue that sometimes appears, and it just appears, and it's like, oh yeah, there it is, and I can see it without really kind of identifying to it. But it will still happen. There will still be a moment of forgetting, and there'll be I haven't got this, or that coach seems to get more clients than me, or I need to be like this person if I'm going to get. That's where it mainly manifests for me, in that kind of space. But now it's just kind of very transitory. It sort of moves through really quickly, and there's less identification with it. And I think, the more you kind of hang out in this space, the more you keep identifying with the space rather than keep identifying with any of the objects in that space, then the easier it becomes to sit in that space and not identify with the comparisons that you make with other people. I think that goes, and it kind of goes, and it stays gone. There's no more kind of and by that I mean with other people, in terms of when you're walking out and you're looking at people, there's no kind of internal dialogue going, oh, that person's this, that person's that. They're just bodies moving around, and there's no person in there. And once you see that there's no person in there, then it becomes really easy to interface with them, because you just see them as, oh, there's no person there, it's fine, I can, like there's no person here either. So it becomes easier to have a conversation and talk to them, because you're on the same level then, because there's no comparison going on. It's like the other week, there was a homeless guy at the into the forest, and he was sat in this chair, and I just went up and talked to him, and it was about it. About the whole situation. I was like, oh, so what is it like now with everybody? And he's like, oh, it's easier because I can keep people at a distance. You know, so it was nice to have a conversation about his experience rather than sort of anything else. And I don't think I would have done that sort of a few years ago. Now there's more of a seeing everybody as equal, because they are me. So if they're me, then they can't be anything other than me. So it makes it easier that way. But there's still that kind of ego that's here that keeps trying to reinforce itself and show up and wave its hands and say, look at me and take notice, please, and you're not worthy. And I think that's always going to be there. I don't think that ever goes, is it? Maybe it does. Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
What about you, Helen?
Yeah, definitely less. Definitely less. Yeah, there used to be so much more like, oh, look what they're doing, and I'm not capable, and I'm not doing that, and yeah, very much more just, and this is my path, and I'm living my life, and it doesn't, like, brilliant whatever anybody else is up to, but it doesn't mean that I need to be doing that. And I think just like that example this week, I think there's just a quicker recognition of that suffering, a quicker recognition that the suffering isn't saying, oh yes, you really are terrible, and you really do need to work harder at this social media thing. The suffering in that moment was saying, whoa, hang on, we're getting lost. We're going into a story. We're going into imagination here of me and her, and what it should be like, and what good is, and what success is, and what we imagine comes from success, and all that kind of domino. But yeah, so much quicker. Just, and obviously I'm not consciously aware of all that. Like, I don't sit there going, I'm suffering. What's going on there?
Step two.
Yeah, because it's kind of like we said in the positive thinking one, the minute we start trying to manufacture a dropping out of that thinking, that's just layering in more thinking. And so, yeah, who knows? Maybe there'll be another time where all that thinking gets layered in, but that most recent experience, it just burst. It was just a momentary, no, that's not happening. Let's just come back to here, and then back here you find more clarity.
Yeah. So it's in the understanding, isn't it? It's in the understanding of the design and how it works. That's where the clarity comes from, that shifts down into behavioural level. We focus so much on a behavioural level in terms of, we need to change this. How do I stop comparing? I need to do less of this. That's just not. That's going to send us around in circles, isn't it? Although it looks very compelling, it's just shifting that conversation and seeing this is how it works. And once you see how it works, obviously that's what we'll do less of.
Yeah, and no wonder it's compelling, because we've been told it all our lives.
Yeah.
Hear husbands saying to kids, stop being grumpy, and it's like, oh, how do I do that? That's actually possible, but we try and teach kids to think we do teach kids that they can control that stuff. That's where the getting lost begins. Yeah, so I love it, Nat. Absolutely, we need to look upstream from the content, look to the source, and that's look to the mechanics. That's then it's simple.
And that's for every single theme that we discuss, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really. Although the theme looks like the thing, it's really not, is it? It's what's behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing provides a nice access route.
Yeah.
Like, if we didn't have that, if we didn't have words like comparison and an experience of that, we wouldn't be able to talk about what's behind it. So it's it's both together, isn't it? Are there any other questions, Gary?
Don't know. We'll put the question out and wait for the little delay.
It's like that awkward 30-second delay.
Questions. Any more questions? We'll see. Just entertain yourself for a couple of minutes while this is happening.
Well, yeah, I'll add a bit about, because I put that post out yesterday about comparison and saying about how we will so quickly normally look for others who are, if we're suffering, we'll look for others who are suffering too.
Mm-hmm.
To try and make us feel okay. It's like, oh, phew, I'm normal, good.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else is having the same kind of crappy experience. And how, and yeah, we'll maybe put the post in the show notes, but I guess it was really it was to highlight just now how it's not then to demonize any kind of activity that makes sense from a space of, I feel like this is rubbish. So like Nat, from a health perspective, it's really made sense to go and find other people who've had COVID who, let's compare symptoms, let's compare duration and the ups and downs of it. Like, if it makes sense to do that, then that's going to happen. And back to your point just now about not getting into the content and trying to change behaviour at a behavioural level. So there's no point wrangling with, oh God, but I'm seeking a self-help group, or I'm seeking somebody else to kind of back up my story to make me feel better. Like, it's not to now say, oh, okay, so we shouldn't be doing that, because that's the ego seeking, that's the identity seeking. All that's being offered here is to look at that, to see what's going on. And like we've just said, when you see something from an upstream place, from a position of the mechanics of the whole system, then naturally downstream it might start looking like less of that is needed. But naturally, no effort needed, it's like saying to a drug addict, just stop taking drugs.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't work. If anything, sometimes it increases drug use, because it's like fighting itself with itself. So yeah, if comparing to soothe the identity makes sense, then comparing to soothe the identity will happen. And if you explore, and if you see something fresh, and if you see something new and see what's actually happening, then maybe that will happen less. But it's not beginning from any kind of berating over, oh, I shouldn't be doing blah blah blah, because then we're just caught in the same level of confusion.
Good. So we done? Is that a wrap?
I think it.
Yeah.
We'll wrap here. There's no questions. I don't know what we'll talk about next week. What are we talking about next week? Are we going to put that out to our new group?
Did we decide loneliness?
Loneliness. Yeah. Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah. we like the big issues.
Yeah, it's not the big issue. Yeah. So next week we'll talk about loneliness, aren't we? I think.
Yeah. Fab.
Cool.
Yeah, and this is going to be available as usual via the podcast tomorrow. Obviously the YouTube link stays up if anybody wants to watch it afterwards. Yeah, and we've obviously set up a private group on Facebook to support the podcast if anybody is interested. It just allows people to have a chat within a closed, safe space. So feel free to join there and have a gander if you like. And I guess we'll see you all next Thursday, won't we?
Yep.
Yeah, same time, same place.
Brilliant.
Same channel.
Yeah, same channel.
Thank you very much. Speak to
Thank
you
you
soon.
guys.
Take care. Bye.
See you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.